government's handling of information across all platforms borders on criminal idiocy. The IRS is frying hard drives, the VA's drowning in paper. Is there any record-keeping medium that the government could use that could work for them? Microfiche will do it. Stone tablets will do it. We could take a page out of the ancient Greeks, weave all of our important information into an epic poem and recite entirely from memory, passed down over generations as part of a federal archival oral tradition from bard to apprentice, but you'd probably lose that page.
Or use crayon from what we've been seeing, right? It's exactly what more than a few people and groups wanted. The Internal Revenue Service, caught up in a whirlwind of accusations and investigations, unsteady, wobbling about trying to protect itself, and in the process leaving certain money machines a wide avenue to work their dollar-dumping magic, and just in time for the midterm elections. Bring back the crayons. Welcome to MidPoint. Senior reporter for the Center for Public Integrity, David Levinthal, joins us on the show. David, thanks for being here.
Hey, it's a pleasure. Good to be with you.
David, get us up on this whole study here, because this goes back to Crossroads GPS, and that's the group that Karl Rove and Ed Gillespie were involved in here. Kind of give us a little quick synopsis here, how this all began.
Sure. Well, of course, the headlines over the past couple of years, really, and especially lately, have been all about the Tea Party scandal, the targeting of conservative groups by the IRS for reasons that, of course, a lot of people thought were absolutely disastrous and wrong. But what we wanted to try to do with this report is dig several layers deeper, go back not only a couple of years, but a couple of decades to look at this part of the IRS that's responsible for overseeing nonprofit groups and get to the bottom of what it does and whether it does its job or not, whether it follows the law or not. And the bottom line is that it really isn't. The fact of the matter is that the Exempt Organizations Division, which is this kind of arcane element of the IRS, is number one, losing staff at a very, very large rate, losing money at a very large rate. It has a federal mandate to do a whole lot of things according to law, but yet at the same time, it's not able to, according to all the interviews that we did and all the research that we did as part of this project. It really can't do its job or follow the law at the degree that one would expect it to.
Didn't the IRS, though, bring this on themselves with decades of stunningly, unbelievably bad management and overlaying constants on top of constants and new rules on top of new rules? They really did this to themselves, though, didn't they?
There seems to be two things going on. Number one, you're right. The IRS has not been its own best advocate and own best ally in making a lot of mistakes over the past many decades. Of course, the IRS is not everyone's favorite agency. I bet if you did a poll of 100 Americans, you wouldn't have a single one who would say, oh, I love the IRS. But at the same time, too, Congress has been routinely and almost systematically cutting resources to this particular element of the IRS that is a little different. And if you'll indulge me, most of the IRS is all about bringing in money. It's about collecting tax revenue. This particular division is all about making sure that nonprofit organizations are operating in the way that they should be so that they don't have to give taxes to the federal government. So for the average taxpayer, for somebody wondering, well, what does this exactly mean for me? It means this: if you have organizations that are nonprofit groups, but really shouldn't be nonprofit groups, then in a way, taxpayers are subsidizing the actions of groups that shouldn't be nonprofits. So regardless of whether you're conservative or liberal or Democrat or Republican, if you've got a lot of these groups running around and acting in a political way, but they shouldn't be, then you're almost opening your wallet to make sure that these organizations can keep operating unfettered, even when by law they shouldn't be operating quite in that way. It really does strike to the heart of the whole scandal that's come up over the past couple of years. But at the same time, too, this is something that has its roots going back, again, more than a couple of years, but a couple of decades.
Doesn't this open itself up to an astounding amount of criminality when you think about it?
And that's really the issue that the IRS is trying to grapple with right now. First of all, the rules are very fuzzy. There's this principle of if you're a nonprofit group, if you're a so-called social welfare organization, and these are the groups that have become very, very political in some cases over the past few years. They're engaging in political activity. They're advocating for and against candidates. As a nonprofit group, you can do that to some degree, but you're not supposed to have a primary purpose of engaging in that type of activity. So the IRS's role in all of this is to kind of be the cop on the beat, to make sure that they're not engaging in political activity to that degree. And if they are, then they force them to register as a kind of group that would actually have to pay taxes in order to engage in that type of activity, either a political group or a different type of nonprofit. Don't want to get too far in the weeds, but the IRS effectively has been doing that almost not at all over the past couple of years. They've really just been in a very bad position, and part of that is them being their own worst enemy. Part of that is Congress definitely cutting off resources, and part of that is just grappling with the main issue at hand, which is being investigated by multiple committees in Congress, which is how bad did they screw up when they started going after Tea Party organizations in particular.
Can we just say now, beyond a shadow of a doubt, that the nonprofit division of the Internal Revenue Service is just as scared as they possibly could be at this point, and they are paralyzed by fear, just not wanting to do anything?
They are absolutely paralyzed. They're not taking any demonstrable action in the here and now regarding these types of groups. Now, that remains to be seen whether in the future, and we're talking after the 2014 midterm elections, whether they're going to do something. In particular, clarify the rules surrounding these types of nonprofit organizations that are engaging in political activity. Now, we've talked to the commissioner of the IRS, John Koskinen. He's told us in an interview that come 2015, that they are going to revisit the idea of writing rules, being very specific in exactly what it means to be a nonprofit and engage in political activity. They tried doing that last year. It was met with a whole bunch of resistance, not only from Republican and conservative groups that felt that they were patently unfair in many of the rules that they proposed, but also many liberal groups, too, that felt that they went too far in other degrees. And again, I can't underscore enough that, this is something where you have conservative groups and liberal groups engaging in this type of activity. There are plenty of liberal groups this election cycle that are nonprofit organizations that are very much advocating for liberal candidates, as well as the ones on the right as well. So this is both sides playing it, and there's not a whole lot of clarity in the rules that exist today, which is why the IRS, at least if it's going to do one thing, is going to try to focus on the issue of clarifying the rules so that everyone understands what it means to engage in political activity if you're a nonprofit organization.
All right, now in the study, you quote Larry Gibbs, a former IRS commissioner who served under Reagan and H.W. Bush, and he said, quote, "Nonprofit regulation is," and here's the quote, "the most explosive, difficult, and challenging area of the IRS," unquote. Is that just simply because you really don't have a handle on where this money is going? So when we talk about midterms and political campaigns, there's a lot of money buried there, but it doesn't always have to show up. It just kind of mysteriously happens to wander in.
Well, in a way, it does. So the standard for any political committee, you might be talking about a PAC, you might be talking about a super PAC. Even the committees, the political committees that candidates themselves are part and parcel of. What they have to do, they can engage in political activity effectively any way they want to, but they do have to do a couple of things. Number one, they have to account for the money that's being spent. But more importantly, they have to disclose where the money's coming from. The principle and the idea behind that being, all right, you're running in a public election. You've got people voting for you one way or another. They deserve the information to make a good decision about who's supporting your candidacy or who's supporting your organization. The difference with nonprofit groups is even though they're not supposed to have that primary purpose of engaging in politics, they can do so to a significant degree, and they don't have to disclose their donors. They don't have to tell the public who's behind them. So if you've got some conservative group coming in and spending millions of dollars in a race, we really don't know where that money is truly coming from, save for the name of the organization itself, which oftentimes means very little to the voting public. Conversely, same thing with liberal groups. If you've got an organization coming in with millions of dollars and touting some liberal politician, then we don't know where that money's coming from either. So that's really the rub here, and why so many people are agitated about this, why so many people are upset about this. And to a larger degree, it speaks to one's ability as an organization, a nonprofit organization, to speak freely. And you do have a lot of conservatives out there who say, well, this doesn't really upset me all that much. They're an organization. They should have the right to engage in politics, regardless of whether they're a political committee or a nonprofit. So there is that element of the debate as well.
10 seconds, quick answer here. Is the big thing here for the public to realize that now with the IRS frozen, there's money going into the midterms, there's money funding political campaigns, and here we go, all worried about how much money it is, and the guy with the biggest wallet can basically get the most done.
The bottom line is there will be tens of millions of dollars, and there already has been, from nonprofit organizations that do not have to disclose their donors flowing into the 2014 midterms. And if the IRS doesn't do anything about that, you can expect that happening in 2016 to a whole new level.
I know there's got to just be some people smiling about the IRS being frozen and not being able to do anything, but it's not all that good, really. David Levinthal, thanks so much for joining us, my friend. Excellent report. We'll talk again soon.
Hey, it's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. And remember, it doesn't mean you can't pay your taxes either, all right? Just I know that's what you're thinking. After the break, John Kerry, Peter King, and Jason Riley sounding off on the Sunday News Gab Fests. And still in this hour, Around the Dial with Lars Larson from KXL Radio in Portland, Oregon. That and a whole lot more coming up as we continue right here on MidPoint.